Hello, Not Manly here. Welcome back to episode 25 of Kerbal Space Program, where we're sending up a resource scanner aboard the Razorforce 7, our single stage to orbit for Eve aircraft. I'm going to time warp ahead to make sure we are sitting above Gilly's orbit. Kerbal Engineer shows time to relative ascending and descending nodes, but right about when I try to de-warp it, something odd happens. Well, let's just fast forward. We'll go to about 5 or 4 minutes or so. That'll be close enough. Jeb and Bill are waiting patiently on the runway until the Kraken strikes and drops our aircraft straight down on 1.7 times gravity. Well, let's do this again. Now, I tried this again and I got fed up, so I just turned on a couple of cheats just long enough to let the craft resettle after time warping. What am I supposed to do? I suppose I could have time warped from the Space Center view and then come back to here. What was the difference? You know what? Close enough. Look at that. Ow. Well, we'll get that gear resettled and then we'll take off. I will really try to avoid using these if I can help it. Sorry about that. In any case, let's get these guys on their way. Now, because we're sitting directly underneath Gilly's orbit, all I need to do is adjust our relative inclination to keep it, well, within 1 degree. Ideally less than 1 degree. So we do this here at the easiest part, which is right at the beginning of the climb, where we have the most air, the most maneuverability, and those powerful Zephyrus turbofan engines. Now, we haven't actually seen a full ascent here with a payload with the current edition of Ferrum Aerospace Research. This is an unofficial build made for Kerbal Space Program 1.4.5. I have fixed the wings and other lifting surfaces from explodium breathing engines to work correctly with Ferrum Aerospace. There we go. We go up to about 5 kilometers gently. Dynamic pressures are pretty immense over here, at least so we can get enough lift. Come on, Jeb, come on, Bill, you guys have already done this once or twice. Getting up to our ignition of those Beelzebub turbo ramjets. Geez, sometimes 4 times regular speed just isn't fast enough, is it? And there we go. Once again, we've got real plume stock installed, and we've got some gorgeous ethane oxygen plumes there. Look at that. This is going to be a long and treacherous climb to get up to about 19 kilometers and about 1 kilometer per second surface speed. Along the way, we're adjusting relative inclination to Gilly, trying to keep it under 1 degree. Not always successful because Eve rotates underneath us, but that's okay. As long as we are doing 2 crazy maneuvers, we're fine. The Zephyrus turbofans have just flamed out and we've turned them off. If they were about to overheat, we could have turned them off beforehand. Thrusting for our lives. This is about as fast as we can go. Look at that atmospheric compression. Absolutely beautiful. At 18 kilometers now, almost at 19. Igniting those Vector liquid fuel engines, the most powerful 1.25 meter engines we have. Temperature gauges are lighting up across the craft as we ascend. We are on the edge of tolerance for these parts, these Mark II parts and these Big S or Big Ox wing parts. But the ascent is much the same as you've seen before. There we go. Staying prograde surface. keeping our apoapsis about 60 kilometers or so. No more than that, we need to be able to get back home safe. And there we are, coasting gently up to, well, not quite orbit yet, of course, but we have plenty of delta V for closing our orbit once we get up there. And again, for your benefit, I'm going to show this whole ascent, even if it is at 4 times regular speed. Look at that. There we go, our maneuver to close our orbit. Not bad, not bad. 81 meters per second. We got plenty of delta V to spare for this, and even for a little bit of orbital maneuvers to fix our relative inclination with Gilly, we are only at what, 0.3%? No problem. We'll adjust that quickly here. This will let us pick and choose when we can depart out to Gilly. What a beautiful aircraft, the Razorforce 7. Thank you very much there, Razorforce 7, for the inspiration for this single stage to Eve orbit craft. There we go, relative inclination is practically 0. We'll take that, and we'll line ourselves up, and then we will eject our resource survey scanner. We'll send it on its way to Gilly very soon. What a gorgeous aircraft. I could look at this aircraft all day. I don't know what else to say. Just yesterday, Kerbal Space Program 1.5 has been released by Take-Two Interactive. Congratulations, Squad and Private Division and whatever company name they want to call themselves this week. Hopefully we'll be seeing these add-ons updated for KSP 1.5 very soon, as long as there aren't too many bugs in KSP 1.5 preventing these add-ons from working. The big one I'm concerned about is Ferrum Aerospace Research. It was updated by Extreme Trader. Thank you very much there. You pretty much kept my Purple Space Program playthrough alive on KSP 1.4.5. Even if you don't want to take donations, we'll at least take my thanks. Here's our survey scanner. We've got 1.9 kilometers per second. That should barely be enough to get out to Gilly and get to a polar orbit above Gilly. And then we'll be able to find a better mining spot for the Gilly base. That should help us speed up the mining process somewhat. And now that we've got the satellite ejected, it's time to deorbit the Razorforce 7 and bring Jeb and Bill back home safe. Uh-oh. Periapsis was a little low at 31 kilometers. That made the descent a little more interesting than I would have expected, but hey, we are still going to try this. This is one of the hardest things I've attempted in Kerbal Space Program, bringing back a space plane from low Eve orbit. I'm keeping my angle of attack just around 10 degrees again, to try to keep parts from exploding. We've got a couple of pretty sensitive parts there. None of those engines tolerate anything warmer than 2000 Kelvin, and we've got a couple of reaction wheels, the advanced inline stabilizers. Remember, we got to keep those under 2000 Kelvin or they will explode, and this craft will disintegrate into a million pieces and Jeb and Bill will die. But no, we're not going to try to do that here. Again, look, we got flaps 3, negative flaps 3 out there. Try to keep this thing pointed downward. It has a tendency to pitch up at these high speeds. And coming in at this odd inclination, we've got a lot more side slip than I would have liked. Not impossible, but definitely a little harder than a simple equatorial launch and re-entry. Temperature gauges again lighten up across the craft. Now you're not seeing it here at full-time speed, but for these 30 minutes, I had such intense concentration trying to keep this craft from flipping over. I gotta see about trying to fix that. With all that engine mass in the rear of the craft, it is pretty tail heavy, and I am fighting to keep this thing at only about 10 degrees, as you can see there. Such intense concentration that you are not seeing in the playback. In fact, I lose track of the camera, and it points a little sideways. You get to look at a little bit of profile view of this gorgeous aircraft. But we do slow down to below Kerbal orbital velocity, so we've got a better control. We're still having control issues though. We are slower, but the air is so much thicker here at 25 kilometers up. Comparable to about Kerbal air density at this altitude, but we are again moving much, much faster. Unbelievable. I've got flaps turned off now because the thicker air is starting to lift the craft up a bit. Actually, it's trying to pull the craft down a little bit. There we go, restoring flaps to normal. Now we've got more control over this craft, but I think we're pretty far away from the Space Center. By lowering our periapsis below 32 kilometers, we ended up about 250 kilometers away from the Kerbal Space Center. We've got a fair bit of a glide ahead of us, but this craft is not going to just glide in Eve's 1.7 times gravity. We're going to have to do a powered flight for a while. I end up getting pretty low, and I can see the markers at the runway, but I don't see the Space Center itself. Turns out we've got that mountain in our way. That's about 3.5 kilometers up, so here I am being careful with the level flight. I want to stay well above that ground, at the same time lining up on the runway. We did come in at a 12-degree inclination, so there's some adjustments to do. I've got CurbNet up there because that fly-by-wire hub does have CurbNet support, and at least I can get the relative altitude of where I am. And already 2.5 kilometers, 2.7, 2.8. Look at that, 2.87. Pretty high. Oh, 3.7, 3.15. That's a pretty impressive cliff. In fact, we've got ground scatter quite clearly visible there. But hey, now we have cleared that ridge and we are doing our descent. We've got our reverse thrust because I was silly and I forgot to re-enable spoilers on those control surfaces. So I have to rely on the reverse thrust to slow down. Trying to keep dynamic pressure below 40 kilopascals so that we don't lose control and go into Mach tuck. We do that, this craft dives straight down, and Jeb and Bill will make a nice crater just before the Space Center. A beautiful approach, much more controlled than previous approaches we've done with this craft. Okay. Gentle approach to the landing, look at that, probably what, 3 degrees? We gotta watch out there. We are moving pretty slow, so it's pretty easy to spin out. Careful, 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 Jeb. We got our landing gear out and we got our lights on so we can see where the ground is. Absolutely amazing. Jebediah Kerman making these missions pretty routine. That's a little bright. We'll turn the lights off and then we'll get a good view of the ground. Here we are. Hey, not a bad descent speed, under 90 meters per second, and there we go. Drogue chutes out. The Ferrum Aerospace haven't been fixed. The drogue chutes still act like drogue chutes. They don't come to a complete stop. But still, in the thick air of Eve, its high gravity, it'll bring us to a gentle stop. Look at that. Touchdown, fully recovered. A nice profile view of that gorgeous Razorforce 7. And we check back out with our resource scanner we're going to send out to Gilly. The initial ejection is 1.27 kilometers per second. but we're looking at the insertion burn and we only have 1.9 kilometers per second of delta V. What's the insertion going to cost us? Come on. Uh-oh. 683. We're not going to have enough, but I've got a cunning plan to show off in the next episode. Until then, I'm not manly. Fly safe.